Hello, this is Cynthia Sue Larson with RealityShifters.com. Today I'm talking with you about some really interesting things, including JOTT, DOP, Jottles, and some of the earliest recorded reality shifts and personal Mandela effects. So this journey began for me this month with this book, JOTT, which I'd never heard of, but Jeff Mishlove told me about. It turns out that there's an author, got a photo of her, and her name is Mary Rose Barrington. That's her here. And she was originally trained as a lawyer, but she was very involved in the psychical research and so forth. And she's got this book, which is fabulous. She was born in London in 1926. So she's no longer with us at the moment, which is unfortunate. I never got to meet her. But she looks fabulous because what she describes in this book, JOTT, which was published in 2018, is a lot of the work that she'd been doing in the 1990s that I never knew about. And it has to do with what she calls just one of those things, which is JOTT. And it's when things disappear and come back or relocate and why it happens. So what I find so interesting is that as she describes in this beautiful book, about half the book is case studies, some of the finest ones that came to her attention that had been collected since the 1950s. At least they involve incidents that occurred in the 1950s. And I love them because they really capture some of the essence of what I have seen with reality shifts since I've been studying them in the 1990s and talking and writing about ones I experienced in the 1980s. And so what's so remarkable about this is that in the process of writing this book, JOTT, she definitely delves into some of the things that I've explored as well over more than 20 years of firsthand reports that I've been publishing with dates, times, places, and the details. Now, Mary Rose Barrington was a member of this organization, the Society for Psychical Research in England, and she became the president of the Oxford University Society for Psychical Research, and she'd been interested in this topic for years. I did not know about her, nor the term JOTT, nor Jottles. So in the process of exploring that, I also found the work of another researcher from Australia who is new to me as well. And his name is, let's see, here he is. There's a picture of Dr. Tony Jenks, and he looks like a nice chap. He's a professor of psychology at the Western University in Sydney, Australia. And what he's done also is write about this subject. And I do not yet have his book, but I do have this book, JOTT, and he uses the term JOTT and Jottles, just one of those things. And it tends to give this idea that this experience has been going on for centuries. You know, this is what I have been suspecting, and absolutely. In fact, there's a quote in the book JOTT where Mary Rose Barrington says, "In our time, we seldom have reports of sensational macro phenomena said to have taken place during the 100 years starting mid-19th century, when many people believed that such things were possible and that they could be evoked by the human endeavor, usually with input from the supposed spirit world." So what this idea of JOTT is that objects can appear, disappear, transform, and transport. Those are the words I've used. Mary has some very colorful words that she uses, and she was using them before I ever heard about this. Back in the 1990s, she was calling them flyaways, when objects vanish, turn-ups. That's not the vegetable. That's when things turn up. These are objects appearing. Windfalls, where you get something turning up that you never have any reason to believe ever belonged to you. Comebacks, that would be what I'd call reappearing. Objects come back after they've disappeared. Walkabout, I would call that teleporting or moving on its own. It's something moves around. And trade-ins, this is what I'd call transforming. So it's where something has been traded for what you previously had. And I love these words. They're so cute. They're so colorful. If you wonder what was she ascribing all this to, can't ask her in person anymore, but fortunately she does describe it in her book, and she gives credit to Cosmic Mind after first going through this beautiful description of a wide variety of different psychic and metaphysical experiences that people have in order to put what she calls JOTT, or what I and PMH Atwater have been calling reality shifts, and what people now call personal Mandela effects, putting it into a broader overview of all of the different interesting phenomena that people tend to experience. Now, I did mention this other gentleman, and this is Tony Jenks, the professor of psychology. It's his photo. And I don't have his book in hand yet, but I have ordered it. But I just was so excited I had to share these ideas. And I was fortunate enough to find a video presentation that he gave. It's about an hour and 11 minutes long, where he describes that he takes the same terminology that Mary Rose Barrington came up with, and he simplifies it. He sort of combines things down into just disappearances, appearances, reappearances, and replacement. I would really still call these things transformations. But what's so exciting about Tony's view of this is where it gets really good, because he delves into the psychology of what's the difference between people that experience these things, coming back, that they say that like it vanished or it moved or it changed. In one case, in this book, JOTT, in fact, Mary Rose talks about a very simple travel alarm clock that completely changed. It was like a different device entirely. And then the woman did receive back the device she originally had. These are the kind of things I've also been tracking for more than 20 years. Got thousands of them on the realityshifters.com website. And what's interesting to me that I want to go back to with Tony Jenks is that he describes, because he's got the psychological background, he was able to find out what kind of people are experiencing these JOTTs and what he calls DOPs, which is disappearing object phenomena. What we know is most commonly right now, personal Mandela effects, what PMH Atwater and I have been writing about as reality shifts. Whatever you want to call it, though, it's interesting to Jenks because he noticed that people that have these experiences are no crazier or having cognitive defects than regular people. The sorts of things he looked for was pretty extensive. I was really impressed. He was looking to see, do experiencers suffer from such things as transience, telescoping, errors of commission, suggestibility, illusionary correlation, confirmation bias, perceptual blindness, that would be like inattentional blindness, altered states of consciousness, that would be hallucinations or auto-hypnosis, encoding errors such as absent-mindedness, memory distortion, coming from, for example, pre-existing beliefs, and loose associationism. What he found was that these experiencers are not different in any of those ways from non-experiencers. So that means people who are experiencing personal Mandela effects are not crazy. And that's coming from a psychologist in Australia. Good news. He also describes that he considers these what he calls DOP events, disappearing object phenomenon, which includes, of course, what he would call reappearances and he would call replacement. These are discontinuities. His view of it, in contrast to what Mary Rose Barrington's view was, is that basically it looks like it's having something to do with, where did I put that down? Got my notes here. I usually work on the blog at the same time as I'm putting the video together. So please do check out my blog where I've got all of the links so you can see the video that I'm talking about that he did. And basically, Jenks is recognizing that there are discontinuities, of course, when things reappear and move around and so forth. But at the same time, there's a seamless quality. It's as if once something comes back, it's always been that way. It's like the history lines up with it. Now, we notice that too when I say we, I mean reality shifts researchers and personal Mandela Effect researchers. We notice that too. And I think it's extraordinarily interesting that basically his viewpoint is that our psychology has something to do with it. We do seem to be having something to do with the creation of these effects. Now you may wonder, what's my take on these typologies that we now have reviewed that come from Mary Rose Barrington in JOTT, and then from Tony Jenks in his book, Disappearing Object Phenomena. Well, what I've noticed, and you can see this when you go to the Reality Shifters website, it's not so cut and dry, and I've never seen it that way in the last 20 years, nor has PMH Atwater. Instead, what both PMH and I have been noticing, in addition to those 4 or 6 categories that these folks have, I also would add to it that we definitely notice changes in the experience of time. There are people who notice loops of time, traveling faster than you should ever be able to travel on the freeway and arriving somewhere in way less time than you'd expect. Such things as meeting your future self, and also other things such as being alive again, which is where the Mandela Effect gets its name, which I wrote about in Reality Shifts when I described Larry Hagman, the actor, definitely being alive again after I had really seen that he had died. The news story was that he had simply been through some surgery, and that's what had happened. But I remember differently, and a lot of us do. And the other thing that these other books don't delve into so much is the variety of experience. That one experiencer can see a shift in reality, but it's not objectively true for everyone. Other people may disagree. I cover this in my book, Reality Shifts, and a lot of the people who cover this Mandela Effect are talking about that as well. So to wrap it up, I'll just say that my terminology, my typology that I've been talking about would be disappearances, appearances, reappearances, transformations, which does include physical transformations of our body. In my book, Reality Shifts, my hair got curly, never been curly, it had been straight. Eye color can change, and sometimes healing can occur. I cover these things in Reality Shifts. We also witness them with the Mandela Effect. Other things to add to DOP and JOTT are the alive again phenomenon itself, which is where we get, of course, Mandela Effect. Also, teleportation and tunneling. I think it does get touched on a little bit when I read these stories in JOTT, but for some reason, both Jenks and Barrington do not go there. I think it's very important that we recognize sometimes we can go right through objects as if they're not there. And then synchronicity, I definitely include that. It has to do with timing and space and just extraordinarily meaningful occurrences. So that brings in all of these things like healing and synchronicity. So that's the larger view of the Mandela Effect and what I've been calling reality shifts. And then the reason I bring up the word quantum jumps or quantum jumping is that's when you move into recognizing that we are here to be cause. And that's very much in keeping with Barrington says. She says it really has to do with cosmic mind and working with it. We see something similar with the book that I've ordered and not yet read, but love the talk that Jenks gives on the internet. There he is. And he talks about this as well, that basically it looks like we have a lot to do with it. May not be conscious, it may be something, who knows? We're still working on figuring it out. But in the meantime, I'm really happy to have found 2 new to me researchers that have been doing this for quite some time. And in the case of JOTT, indicating that we've got now written, documented reports of this phenomenon going back to the 1950s, with hints that it had been occurring for hundreds, if not thousands of years before. So until next time, this is Cynthia Sue Larson reminding you to keep asking, how good can it get, with realityshifters.com.